Happy Monday night, kicking off the week with Shout, a Buffalo football podcast. The Bills open training camp this week. So we have a jam-packed week of shows. We're starting it out right here tonight on Monday night with a very special one. This is one we've been trying to put this together for months. Down below, you'll see Ryan Talbot, as always, my co-host here. Mike Taylor won the billboard contest months and months ago, where you had to go to the billboard, do a little selfie, send it in, and the grand prize was an episode co-hosting on the Shout Football podcast. We finally put it together. You're back from vacation. What is up, Mike? Welcome into the Shout Show.
I appreciate you guys. We've had different reasons for having to reschedule, but it's all been worth it. So it's great to be with you guys, and looking forward to chatting a little football in front of the start of the full training camp on Sunday. So,
Ryan, do you want to take everybody through our hellacious week that we got coming up for, all Bills content all the time?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is one of three podcasts, technically four, because we have one on Sunday as well. But I was going to say three this week. We have tonight's show. Wednesday, our staple show that we always do. We have two guests lined up. I'll let you get a little bit more into that, Matt, here in a minute. And then Friday, we will be at Resurgence Brewery, 8 p.m. Live podcast from there. I believe it's the kickoff of Bills Appreciation Weekend at Resurgence, something that we've had in the works there for a little bit. Matt put out a little teaser on social media today, a T-shirt that Mike is actually wearing right now. You have your chance to win one there at Resurgence Brewery on Friday night. And then Sunday, once the first training camp practice is in the books, we'll get back together, Matt and myself, and we will have our fourth show of the, of the week and the start of training camp.
So just to clarify, I did actually pay for my shirt. I didn't get gifted one. I bought it before I found out about this, the thing on Friday with you guys with the live show.
And you said you're in Illinois, Mike?
That's correct. So it'd be a little bit difficult for me to get out there easily because I got a few things with work this week myself. So,
right. I get it. It's tough. We got a jam-packed week though. So wherever you are in the US, globally, wherever you watch the show, we're going to have you covered all week long. That Wednesday show, it's going to be super fun. We're kicking things off probably at about 8:30. Jenna Cottrell from Wham in Rochester. She's going to join us, kind of help us look at, training camp a little bit, but also the return to Rochester, Pittsburgh at St. John. John, is it St. John Fisher?
St. John
It is St. John
Fisher University.
That was the big change. I'm trying to make sure that I say it right every time. She'll come on for that part of the show. And then at 9:00, we're going to have a special, longer show with Andrew Galarno, who's the food editor at the Buffalo News. Every year I get, I'm not kidding, 20 DMs, people asking me I'm coming to Buffalo for the game. Sometimes opposing teams' fan bases, where do I go eat? What are all the places to go? So we're going to take a deep dive into the Buffalo culinary scene. What are, have to have it's when you're coming into town for a Bills game. And then we can kind of point everybody to that episode in the future. But Ryan, I wanted to start off, and forgive my voice. It's tournament season for the travel team. Last practice today, first game on Wednesday, so the voice is a little bit hoarse. I'm gonna have to take some cough drops, maybe some tea throughout the course of the week to keep the voice where it needs to be. But start us off here, because one of the big topics I want to do is the hype train that's kind of around the Bills right now. It hasn't been like this ferocious, probably even in the Super Bowl years. Maybe, I go back that far, but it's hard to remember if it was this big because there was no social media back then. So right now, this is, the Bills are at the center of the NFL world. When people are talking about Super Bowl contenders, usually the Bills are the first team that people mention. And speaking of Super Bowl contenders, Value Home Centers is always at the top of the list when you're talking about big time contenders. They're just a place to be. Customers can shop anytime at valuehomecenters.com, buy online, pick up today, or find a huge selection of products that ship to your local store from their warehouse for free. Ryan, is the hype train, should it scare you if you're a Bills fan?
I don't know if it should scare you. I understand for the fans that say that in the comments. It's scaring me. The hype is a little bit. No Super Bowl equals devastation. I see here, but this is what happens when you build up a roster and you have a team that has all the talent in the world on both sides of the ball. A team that was very close to being in the AFC Championship game for 2 years in a row. Had some blunders not happened late in that game against Kansas City, but with this talent, like you said, it kind of compares back to the Super Bowl years, but the Super Bowl years, it was nice for the players, most likely because there was no social media. But anytime you turn on ESPN back in those days, stories were all about the Bills at the top of the hour and the AFC being the dominant team there. Sports Illustrated magazine, any football magazines you may have subscribed to back then, always big national stories on Jim Kelly, Thurman Thomas, Bruce Smith and the bunch. And they even had the national media commercials to a certain extent too. So, Bills fans have been there before. And obviously the teams of the early 90s, they went 4 years in a row. They weren't able to actually win one. But I feel like this team right now, they have the talent. They're not going to let it get to their heads. And I think this year they're actually ready, Matt, to be the hunted, where I think a little bit last year at times, they had that bullseye on their backs and they weren't prepared for that with the opposing teams giving their best punch, so to speak.
What about you, Mike? You got the NFL Jam shirt on. So obviously you got that, I can't remember. Was NFL Jam was it kind of like a NFL Blitz style game or no?
I think what they've done with this company, what they did was they just took like the NBA Jam concept and they just converted. Because I think NFL Blitz was kind of the closest thing to a Jam thing. So I think they just kind of transitioned it since it works and they do it for social media, for TV shows and movies and other things.
No, I like this. I like the T-shirt. And Ryan mentioned it earlier. If you come out to the show on Friday at Resurgence, you can win one of those. We're still kind of thinking about how we're going to do the contest, whatever that's going to be. But I know a lot of people are excited about it. But speaking of excitement in this team, what has you? First of all, I want you to, chime in on the hype train and how you're dealing with that as somebody that obviously is a big fan of the team. But also, like, what are some concerns, if you have any, of this roster?
Well, I'm relishing the prominence with this team because, let's look at it. We went 17 years without being close to the playoffs. So it's feast or famine. So if you don't like having the excitement and the hype around the team, I mean, it seems like the alternative is going back to where we were with the struggle each year. Is like, are we going to be 7-9? Are we going to be 6-10, 8-8? So I relish it, and I know that these days it's a lot more prevalent. Like, I don't know, like 10 or 20 fold as far as the different media outlets and different angles that they're looking for with coverage of the team. And eventually it's going to get oversaturated and there may be burnout from, the national fan base or even just NFL fans. Just like, okay, this is a feel good story, but now we're tired of hearing the same stories. We're tired of seeing the same things. So you got to kind of toe that line of being burned out on them. But I'm relishing this because I love to see him at the forefront of everyone's lists as far as best players, best team, best defense, best front office, best coaching staff. It's great to have it. And, growing up in the mid to late 80s, as kind of the early stages of my Bills fandom, we had that where they were developing into a good team, and it kind of mirrors what they're doing now. You think in '88, the team went to the AFC Championship game against Cincinnati. Maybe they weren't quite ready, which is kind of how it feels like they were a couple years ago when they lost to Kansas City. Last year, this past season was kind of a heartbreaking loss comparison to the '89 divisional playoff game where Ronnie Harmon dropped the pass in the end zone that would have won the game for the Bills, or at least put them in the lead. And then you're setting up for this year. So is this year a correlation to kind of what 1990 was for the Bills? Obviously, the difference is a new offensive coordinator this year. I think Marcia Broda was in his position with the Bills for a couple of years at that point, or it was his second year. So for me, the biggest concern is seeing how that offense gets going, and do they skip a beat? And if they do, is the talent enough to kind of overcome maybe some of the learning curve that Ken Dorsey has, which I think they have enough talent to do that, to help him kind of develop. Defense feels pretty good. Special teams is good. The 13 seconds thing, that's, just kind of dirt on your shoulder, just kind of dust it off and let's focus on this year like the team is, I think. So.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a great way to
go
look
ahead,
at
Ryan.
it. No, I think that's a great way to look at it. And, going back to the Super Bowl or bust thing one more time, I feel like there's always a handful of teams year in, year out. It's Super Bowl or bust. It's been the Green Bay Packers. It's been the Kansas City Chiefs lately. It's been whatever team Tom Brady has been on, whether it's the Patriots, whether it's Tampa Bay, and minus Brady and the success that he's had, you see how difficult it is to actually finish the job. Aaron Rodgers has one Super Bowl title to his name. Patrick Mahomes has one to his name. So I get that the odds are more likely than not going to end in disappointment, but the fact that the Bills are being talked about as the Super Bowl favorite, the fact that they have all this talent should make fans really excited compared to where they were not that long ago, where, I know a lot of fans that were really excited when Kyle Orton took over as quarterback, because that was like one of the best quarterbacks they had over that drought era. And that kind of tells you everything you need to know about how bad some of those Bills teams were over the drought years.
I was just going to say, and that kind of goes back to the front office of drafting and getting us the solid players where we're not have to scramble to find maybe a guy that had his foot half out the door as far as retirement, like Kyle Orton was, or finding, a journeyman quarterback to kind of get us through a few games like what Derek Anderson did a few years ago. And yes, I had tickets to the Colts Bills game in Indy where Derek Anderson was the quarterback. So I know what that pain is. So I'm relishing it. If you told me that the Bills were going to lose in the AFC Championship game this year, I think immediately in the moment and the days after that, I'd be probably upset and just really disappointed. But as we move further and further away from it, I'd probably be a little bit more accepting. It feels like they're still, at the top of it. Do we want them to win a Super Bowl? Absolutely. But the fact is they're competing for the conference championship, maybe advancing to the Super Bowl. That's, I kind of think, what we all want, and kind of that sustained success if we can get it. Obviously, New England is kind of the blueprint to have that elongated success. So, we've got a ways to go with that.
I think for me too, it's like you take the going into training camp last year, and what was the main concern if you were a Bills fan? It was like, okay, was Josh Allen's 2020 like a 1-year wonder kind of situation? Is this going to be something that's sustainable? Do you have your quarterback of the future? And obviously he goes out, and it was a little bit up and down there for a little while, but I think definitively in 2021, he answered all those questions on the biggest stage and the biggest games. He played his best football. And I think you're confident in that going into the season. Like, no matter what happens with Ken Dorsey, no matter how like all these pieces have to fit together, I think that if you're a Bills fan, the confidence meter is probably at the highest with Allen, which is almost like the most important one, right? Like, the Sean McDermott confidence meter, talk about that a little bit. And maybe that's, kind of charted down a little bit over the course of the last few months. But when it comes to Josh Allen, I mean, the confidence level is probably the highest that it's been since Jim Kelly in his prime days for a quarterback in Buffalo.
My initial thought, as you're talking about with Coach McDermott, is the 85 Bears. Now, I would say that Mike Dick is probably not the greatest coach or one of the top maybe 5 or 10, but they had the talent to overcome or to, kind of pick up and be better than the coach. So if there's a concern with the coach, I think the talent on both sides, all three phases, if you will, is enough that this team can compete at this highest level, in spite of if there's any concerns with any, slip ups or mistakes maybe the coaching staff would make. But I have the highest confidence in them myself, so I'm not concerned about them at this point.
So where is looking ahead to this season, right? Like, training camp's going to kick off on Sunday. What's like your, as a Bills fan, I'd like to learn a little bit more about you as a Bills fan, but what's your kind of yearly, I don't know, engagement meter? Where does it read right now? Do you go through ebbs and flows? Do you hit like a lull in July where you're like, as soon as training camp hits, I'll kind of get dialed back up again? Or are you at like 100, 365? Like, how does it work for you as a fan?
Well, I think for me, it kind of ebbs and flows. I mean, they're always going to be my favorite team, even though I was born and raised in Central Illinois. I'm a St. Louis Cardinals fan, St. Louis Blues fan, etc. The Bills, since roughly 1986, have been it for me. But, I don't feel like I engross myself enough in it, especially during this kind of downtime of the off season where I have to know every single thing that's going on. Sure, I'm reading articles and stuff and learning about how things could project as far as maybe the roster or maybe the starting players. Obviously, we're not going to get a lot of information on changes to the schematics on offense or defense and stuff, but you kind of watch to see what happens with the free agency and if there's any moves made there, and obviously watch the draft to see where they kind of fill in the holes. But then it's kind of that downtime. And, I took the time to go on vacation, but as we're kind of winding into camp, I'll keep an eye on things. But for me, I think the main thing at this point with this team is just the health of the players, because again, I believe they have the talent. I believe the schemes are good, if not great. That's debatable, but I think they have the ability to be champions. So it's just a matter of staying healthy and kind of seeing maybe what the younger guys, because the rookie mini camp, I think, or the rookie camp started today. They reported for camp. So just to see how they develop and how they kind of fit in and become a good part of the team.
Yeah,
rookie camp.
Go ahead.
Rookie camp. Yeah, rookie camp did start today, actually. And I actually got a couple DMs about, is coverage going to start this week today since rookies are there? No, we don't. The first practice that we'll have access to is until Sunday.
Yeah. So, one quick thing, you've mentioned it a few times, the talent overcoming the coaching and things of that nature. I love that talking point. The good thing for the Bills, especially on the offensive side of the ball, where you have the new offensive coordinator in Ken Dorsey, who's been here for a few years as quarterbacks coach, is you're not dependent on any young players to necessarily have to emerge this year. You obviously have Josh Allen at quarterback. You have Devin Singletary, who came on strong at the end of the year, Diggs, Gabriel Davis, Dawson Knox, all guys that have been in this system, have been in this offense for quite a few years. Isaiah McKenzie's been here longer than anyone else. So, yeah, you do have some new pieces. You do have some young guys on this roster, James Cook on offense, Kyrie Elam on defense. But there's just so much veteran talent that it's going to help these guys get acclimated into this system, and that continuity is what can help if there are coaching issues, if there are any other kind of issues on or off the field or anything like that. Now, Mike, going through some of the things you sent us, I know you said the interest ebbs and flows, but today, the social media age, is Twitter the go-to? Is it Reddit? Do you still love going to the message boards? What is your personal way to keep up to date on the news?
Well, currently for me, it is through Twitter as far as social media. At one point, I was heavily engrossed in the twobillsdrive.com, the message board, because this is obviously pre-Twitter, which was about before 2009, so you really didn't have any type of live real time being able to follow instead of hitting the refresh button to see if Mario Williams is still in Buffalo to sign with the team or not. So that's kind of the way it goes. I mean, growing up in Central Illinois, you didn't have a whole lot of options. So we actually lived outside the city, so we didn't have cable TV for several years until I was in like junior high. So following the Bills, it's mostly watching the Sunday games. We didn't get the Sunday night game because we didn't have cable. We didn't have TNT. Didn't have ESPN, Monday Night Football maybe, and just kind of gleaning a little bit of information, just following about the team. So you hear about the bickering Bills in the late 80s, early 90s, but then that kind of seemed to dissipate. But then out here, you just didn't really hear a lot of drama or any issues with the team other than just, obviously their success, and maybe they like to have a good time after the game because it was a way to build camaraderie and stuff. But so throughout the years, it's just kind of finding different ways, but other websites like Reddit and things like that, that's just not where I'm focused at. I just like the more what I consider real-time stuff with social media and following you guys, because you guys give great content, of course. So
I think it's funny. I think about it, if I was still a fan, how I would I'd have to take myself back before I started covering professional sports in general to really imagine it, because even when I was with the UFC, I'd still consider myself a Bills fan at that point. And I didn't really I definitely had a lot of ebbs and flows with it. And, when you're covering a sport that doesn't have an off season, it's a lot. And so to then have a fan hood in pro sports, it just wasn't the same. So I wasn't truly a fan, when I was at my most hardcore when social media existed. So I think it just at the beginning of Twitter is probably the last time, and I was just graduating from school and starting to be a journalist. So I would have loved to live in this age to kind of get my hot takes out there and go at it with people. But it's funny, I don't know how much I would have loved Reddit. Respect to those that do. It's not like a knock on that on it at all, but I don't know. Sometimes I think there's a little bit of a nasty tone. Not that there's not a nasty tone on Twitter. So I don't know what I'm really saying there. But sometimes I feel like there's a really pointed nasty tone on Reddit sometimes in specific circles on specific posts. Maybe that's just me misreading. I don't know.
Well, and part of the thing with social media is there's no sarcasm font, so you can't tell when someone's
Right.
being straight serious or if they're just fooling around, just trying to get a rile out of people. So that's a bit of the challenge too. So a lot of the stuff I see come and go. Obviously I have my information tied to my Twitter account, so I can't sit out there and I'm not going to make like some crazy goofy posts. In the heat of the moment, I'll tweet about the Bills during a game where it's just general frustration. And I think in general, maybe one or two of the tweets I deleted like later just because it was just the heat of the moment when I felt dumb about it looking back on it. But, it's a part of the fandom, and we're just, we're kind of trying to connect to a team that, well, at least me, they're about 11 or 12 hours drive from me. And, we've got people all over the country and all over the world just trying to be connected to them. So I don't know, maybe there's people that are trying to get their couple minutes of fame by saying something or, getting a quick 10-second video of someone doing something silly. Who knows? So.
Yeah, that's certainly out there on social media with the viral videos, and it is interesting to compare growing up to what it is now, where when you were a kid, if it was a primetime game and you were sent to bed before it was over, you could turn on ESPN and you would hope that you would catch it at the right time to catch the highlights, or you'd have to go to the newspaper and actually check the box score and things like that for different sports, where now you type in Bills opponent, whatever the opponent's name is, and you'll get the score, you'll get everything you need right then and there within seconds. So the people in this day and age are certainly spoiled when it comes to the coverage and how everything is so is right there at their fingertips, so to speak.
People don't realize, those of us in the kind of the early 90s lived and died by NFL primetime when we had ESPN, because
NFL prime time.
But see, growing up here in Central Illinois, you had Colts games. You definitely had the Bears games. It was a rare occasion if you had a Bills game. So it's like national TV or is an uber important game. Like, for example, the comeback game, we had that here. It wasn't blacked out like it was in most of the parts of Western New York and Buffalo. So I got to watch that entire game. But getting to see the full highlights, Chris Berman and Tom Jackson and later some of the other people that joined in, that was like the highlight of our day, literally and figuratively, because we didn't have any way to see them except for maybe one or two highlights at halftime, or if you caught like a post game. But mostly you're looking for that second game to watch anyway, so you're not really sticking with an initial broadcast and watching the post game highlights. So as it's developed, you can get highlights pretty much within a minute or two of whether it's a Josh Allen pass to Dawson Knox or some nice tackle or something. You can get it practically instantly instead of waiting until 7 p.m. Eastern time for the first set of early games on primetime.
You go back to the 80s with the Bills, right? You said?
Yeah. I'd like to think of my kind of story as probably when I was like about 6 or 7 years old. I remember either listening to a game or catching it on TV and just remembering the announcer was talking about like the red, white, and blue uniforms, because this is when they just started with the red helmets. So it's probably 84, 85. So it was early on with the red helmets. And then I kind of liken my fandom to the first game that Jim Kelly won for him. It was September 21st, 1986. And the reason why I remember that is because we had that game on locally out of St. Louis, Missouri on the CBS. And that was also my 9th birthday. So I was like, this is great. And they won the game. They beat the Cardinals 17-10 when the Cardinals were still in St. Louis. And so it's kind of developed from then. So I would say going on like 36-ish years as a Bills fan. And there's a few of us lurking around here in Springfield, but not a lot. My mom is here, and she took me to my first few Bills games. We went over to Indianapolis because it was like a 3-hour drive. So there was like a Sunday night game in 91, I think, that we went to. It was the height of the Super Bowl teams, and they pulled the starters at halftime or after the third quarter because they had such a big lead on Indy that they didn't need to get anyone hurt that late in the season. So been to Indianapolis a bunch of times, Green Bay twice. Been up to Buffalo 3 times. The last one was last September, so I got to take the selfie with your guys' billboard and had a great time so far. So
So is there a Bills backers of Central Illinois or no?
I don't know of one. The closest one that I'm aware of is the one that's in Chicago. And I think that I can't remember if they're still downtown. There was like a one or two bars downtown, I think. But I haven't been to one of them. I was actually at a backers bar that was in St. Louis, Missouri for that the Patriots Bills game in 2011. The Ryan Fitzpatrick bringing them back to beat Brady and the Patriots. But I couldn't even tell you if they still have that location open. So it's been 10 or 11 years since that game.
Yeah. Now, I know you said there's not a lot of Bills fans around where you're living, but they do say Bills fans are everywhere. You were just on vacation. How about speaking on running in any Bills fans while you were out and about? Where did you go? Did you see any Bills fans, and how did that go about?
So late last month, we'd planned a trip. It's been about 2 years in the making. We ended up taking our family of 4 and then 3 of our friends to on a Greek Isles cruise. So we flew into Italy from Chicago and then spent 3 days in Italy and then a cruise for 8 days. So leading up to that, I said, I've got to get a little bit of, kind of a scouting report and figure out what's the best things to do, what to watch out for. So I reached out to the Bills backers in Italy. And I think they're is it at Bills Italy for their Twitter handle? I can't remember. And they said, well, we're I think they're the ones either up in Venice or they're in a different part of Italy. They're not near Rome. So they said, get in touch with this other guy. His name is Christian, and it's at Christian Go Bill, BIL1, I think it is. So him and I, for several months, actually, we're in conversation about, hey, what should we do? What's good to do? How should we get from Rome to Florence, etc. And we're chatting back and forth about our Bills fandom. He doesn't speak a lot of English. I don't speak any Italian. So luckily there's a thing called Google Translate. So I was able to basically take his DMs to me and then kind of convert them. And then I would try to, reciprocate as far as either putting it in proper English, not slang. So it made it easier for him to understand. So we ended up catching up together. I said, we need to find a time to meet up. He said, absolutely. I thought to myself, because he'd mentioned that they don't have a lot of Bills and NFL stores, obviously not a lot of Bills apparel in Italy. And he was trying to figure out a way to get some. I said, what if I took a few of my things that I have that don't fit me anymore, and I'll just bring them to you? Because I had a few things that actually fit, according to what he was telling me his size was. So I said, I have an old replica Thurman Thomas jersey that I got like in the mid 90s, one of those ones you get from like a department store or from like a sporting goods store or whatever. So I packed that up. I showed him some pictures. I was like, what do you think of that? And he was just over the moon excited. And I said, well, here, I've got an old hat that I don't have. And then when I was in Buffalo last fall for the Washington game, they had whatever that is, that like garage sale on the field. Mm-hmm. So I went there and they had like packs of like the team issued socks, that basically go up to your hips practically. They're so tall. So they had a 10-pack of them. I said, I should send them a pack of those socks. So I took a pair and made sure that they were matching, because the nice thing is the team puts an L for the left sock and an R for the right sock. So I paired those up. So I took them 3 or 4 things, and we met like the morning before we were supposed to go on our cruise. And so we just kind of met, and he brought his wife with him, and we try to have a communication, but they're just as hyped over there in Italy as we are. They check out the games. The backers, Christian does too, and there were some pictures floating around today of those guys over at the Roman Coliseum. But I try to wear my Bills hat when I was there too. And then on the cruise ship, there was actually like a husband and wife, and I didn't get a chance to speak to them at length, but she had like the Zubaz print swimsuit that she was wearing, and he had like the Bills swim trunks. I was like, those are my guys. And I kept trying to put on like my Bills hat or wear like one of my Bills shirts when I would catch them around the ship and stuff. But shout out to those guys. Didn't get a chance to chat with them too much, but then we were getting shout outs, go Bills, when we were in different parts, venues on the ship. And then of course there was one kid, it was like a 10-year-old kid. I had on a Bills shirt, and he walks past me and he yells out, "Go Chargers." I'm like, more power to you, man. But I don't think they made the playoffs last year, but I got no hate, only love for the Chargers. But you tell me about the Patriots, because there's a couple of Patriots fans on there. I just tried to avoid them. But Bills fans are everywhere. With the prevalence of social media and just being able to access the team, they're 6 hours from the Eastern time zone, 6 hours ahead. So the games are in the middle of the night, but they're just as staunch of supporters for the team, and they love the team just as much as we do. So it was a pleasure to meet those guys and kind of see some of them and interact with them. So it was awesome.
Speaking of interacting, you can join Value Home Center's loyalty program. It's called Best Rewards, and you can interact with that every time you shop at Value Home Centers, where customers earn points for purchases every day that will bring you more savings. Veterans and active military earn double points on every purchase every day. So that's a pretty cool setup they got going on over at Value. All right, let's move on to the next portion. And if you're just joining the show, let me kind of recap here a little bit. At the bottom of the screen, that's Mike Taylor. He won the billboard contest way back in September of last year. And we've been trying to find a day to have a show and talk about his Bills fandom and have him kind of take over a little bit as host here, which we could kind of do over this next portion, because we want to kind of shift gears here into, floor is yours. Ask us anything you want, because you had a couple of different topics that you wanted to go in here on your outline. You provided a very in-depth outline, very professional.
Well, I used to work in TV news myself. Technically, I still work in TV because I'm a television director, producer, but I'm at a university, so it's more kind of a laid back. It's not like we're on much of a deadline like TV news is, but I just was curious with both of you guys how, this is the first year since 2019 that you've had access to the team at training camp or in a training camp situation. So I would assume that you guys are looking forward to being able to be out there or to have some good content coming out of there, and maybe to be able to kind of dig and find some good stories to tell and to share with some of the readers and stuff of some of the players, or maybe even kind of the area being glad to have the training camp back and all the kind of the traffic for people and maybe help the economy.
Yeah, I'll start with that. When I grew up, obviously it was at Fredonia and things like that. So when I was a fan, it was great to go there and make the drive, and it was always a very family-friendly atmosphere, the autograph signings after practices. And you still see that today. The players are really good about that. They usually have a few players in the tents. But from the media perspective, I don't want to speak for Matt, but I think he's going to pretty much say this is going to be great for the first time in years, that you're going to have access to these players one-on-one after practices are coming off the field again. Whereas we were in this Zoom craze for the last few years where you might have a really good question, but everyone heard the question, everyone heard the answer. And then you go on, throughout over the course of 2 to 3 weeks, and the same headlines out there multiple times. If there was something that was catchy, where now you can kind of go aside and you can work on a long form piece. You can have that work that's going to stand out because it's something different than what everyone else is hearing at the same time.
So the dynamic that's important to understand from a fan's perspective, like taking you into the locker room or player interactions, is the difference between a Zoom interview and an in-person, like even like a press media scrum. It's vast. Like, first of all, when you do a Zoom interview, everybody has to like kind of raise their hand, and then you get one question, maybe two, if you ask for two, right? So there's not really a chance to follow up. Like if you're kind of going in a good direction and you're starting to get a player to talk about something that, would make a good story, you're kind of, you got to rely on your peers to kind of follow that train down, because you're probably not going to get back in the time that Zoom is happening. Whereas in a media scrum, it's a much more up-tempo, competitive, conversational situation, to where a lot of people that talk on these Zooms that ask questions, and it's no offense to any of them, everybody's got a story that they're trying to work on. So if everybody's kind of going in that their own direction, you could have 20 different directions on a Zoom call. Whereas opposed to if you're kind of fighting for a story that you like with a guy in the locker room, A, you could probably approach it in the media scrum, or B, after the scrum's over, you can kind of grab them off to the side and follow up with a couple other questions to get your story. So from that perspective, having that availability back just in and of itself, local reporters struggle to break stories. I've broken a couple since being on the beat the last couple of years, but all of the relationships that I've built outside of like scouting combine trips and stuff like that, where you build sources, is, in the locker room with players. And so to have that back, and, a lot of those relationships blossom at training camp when you get to be around them in a much less serious setting. And a lot of times half the time I might be talking to players that it's not even for a specific story. It's just to get to know them better for maybe a story down the line. Because right now during training camp, like, you listen to our shows, it's very, I won't be doing a ton of features during training camp because it's all about the day-to-day observational coverage of what this team is going to look like when we get to the start of the season. And then we kind of transition to, I like to do a lot more of those in season. And so a lot of those relationships, a lot of the ideas that come for those stories, they're built in training camp when the recorder's not even on. And so it's a little peek behind. I don't know if that's helpful.
Yeah, and I think this is a good opportunity with obviously 2 or 3 years of either, new acquisitions or draft picks, being able to kind of establish yourself, that working relationship with them, and to build that trust, and then to be able to hopefully mine some good content out of them as far as, telling their story. Maybe there's more to their background or their life, or their maybe a different way that they play that's being developed, that really hasn't been, touched on in the environment of a Zoom call and things like that. So as you build that trust with them, you'll have that opportunity to develop that and kind of shine a light on those players, or maybe it's a member of the coaching staff too. So now, do you normally stay on campus during the training camp? Okay, so
Get to ask that a lot.
So tell me some of the things that you actually enjoy about it, because I'm not sure, sitting in a dorm for however long that is, having to run back to the dorm, feels like you're going back to college of sorts, I'm guessing.
Yeah. Well, actually, when I was in college, I did not dorm, so I never really got the experience until I started covering the Bills. But I've really grown to enjoy it. Like the bed situation isn't great, but I like to consider myself still young-ish, even though I'm about to turn 40. So I could handle it for like a couple nights here and there. But I like, first of all, the camaraderie of the beat. Like, we have a really close, group, and I think getting a chance to be around them and, share conversations about the profession, about the team, and different things like that. I enjoy that. I also enjoy like covering an NFL beat. Like, you don't really have like a home office, right? Like, I'm not working out of Syracuse.com. And to be honest with you, Buffalo News folks, they're not working out of like Buffalo One News Plaza down there downtown. Like, a lot of those folks don't even ever go down there. You're working out of the stadium or your house. And this 3-week period of training camp, it really gives you like a home base where it's like it's all happening in one spot. It makes the job so much more easier. Now, I have 2 young kids also. So like when I come home, it's, they see daddy. It doesn't matter if there's still work that needs to be done. So that dynamic of it too, I just feel like it's a really good way to get to know the team, do a lot of good work over 3 weeks, and kind of set yourself up to get like kind of running downhill once the games start.
And I'm guessing there's going to be a bit of a challenge, since it's been, since about 2019 for the family back home. Is like, well, where's dad? Why isn't he coming home? Well, things have changed. Things are kind of getting it back to a little bit more normal. And I'm guessing that you'll probably get a little bit homesick for them, and then they'll be like,
Yes.
We're ready to hang out and just, have fun and just pile on dad, or just go out for like ice cream, or, well, as I learned in Italy, gelato is the way to go myself. So
I gotta have more gelato. Whenever I see a gelato stand, we were just in New York City, and we were in Little Italy, and there was a ton of gelato stands, and I was like, let's keep going, and we'll go a couple streets, avenues over, we'll find like an ice cream spot. But I feel like gelato I should be more like comfortable getting gelato.
it's like, I'm telling you, it's like every other city block well, we walked the streets of Rome, and we also walked up in Florence as well. And it feels like every other block there's a gelato stand, there's a pizza place. You can't really go wrong. But I think for us, we found the best gelato was outside. I think it's the Florence Cathedral. So we grabbed some. We sat down one afternoon and had some refreshing gelato, just a small amount, just enough, a few euros a piece, and it was perfect. So
Our good buddy Scott Moranto is asking if we're put up in Founders. I'm not sure which one that is, but I think the name of our dorm is Dorsey Hall. If I'm looking at it
Oh, the
correctly,
Honorable Ken Dorsey Hall, right?
yeah, exactly.
Fitting name.
Very fitting. I'll turn it over to Ryan here. You have a look at the outline. Where do you want to go next, buddy?
Yeah, I guess the season outlook, the riding the ups and the downs. Winning some you should win, some you should lose some you should win. And Mike, I'll let you speak on that because again, this is your show. But I think last year you saw that there were some games that the Bills did not show up for that they should have won. The week 1 against Pittsburgh, Jacksonville game, but it all kind of catches up over the course of the season. Is that kind of what you were getting at with that talking point?
Yeah, you would think that most good teams, they'll kind of course correct where. I think the quote was from Dick Vermeil. Hey, we won some we should have lost. We also lost some we should have won, but we're right where we're at. So for me, I would love for the team to go, 14-3 on the season and just run away with the division. That may not be the case.
You must listen to Shout because that's what Ryan predicted.
So, the teams around them obviously know that they need to improve and they're trying to improve, whether that's actually happening is, one difference is on paper to what actually happens on the field. So we'll see. I'm perfectly comfortable with the 10-7, a playoff spot. It's kind of a step back if you say, I'm happy with a wild card, but I just want the team in the playoffs because I think that if they're healthy enough, they're going to do some damage in the playoffs. We saw what they did to New England. What was that, 47-17, without having to give the ball up. Every time they had an offense, they scored. They gave a good scare to Kansas City. I think Kansas City's kind of on the downward a little bit right now until they prove me otherwise. Because I think Cincinnati had their number in the conference championship, obviously, and I think maybe that there's a little bit of a blueprint on how to beat them. Maybe the Bills kind of picked up on something in that regular season matchup with Kansas City. So for the Bills, it's a matter of just keeping yourselves fresh as far as, not giving everyone the same old look and give them a chance to, figure out the strategy on how to beat you. So maybe that's running the ball more with Cook, with Singletary, maybe with Moss or whoever, or maybe it's something more with the tight ends with Knox and with Howard, who knows? But again, it just gets back to just making sure the guys are healthy. Like I take the baseball example in 2006, the Cardinals, I think they went like 83-78. They barely made the playoffs. They should have been beaten by the Mets in the league championship series because the Mets had a better record. The problem was the Cardinals were injured for most of the season, and they started getting their good players back towards the end of the season, getting them healthy, get them in the lineup. And then when it was time for the playoffs, everything kind of levels out. You had the pitching, and, it led them to the World Series, and they beat the Tigers in 5 games. So for me, it gets back to just being healthy because honestly, I don't have a whole lot of faith in Case Keenum, leading the team in the playoffs. I mean, he's a great backup, but obviously you'd rather have Josh Allen behind the helm if he's healthy. So it's just a matter of just keeping everyone healthy and just being ready to go and next man up, I suppose, when it's time.
Ryan Talbot set Bills Mafia ablaze this weekend with the next wide receiver that they're going to sign. What was that about?
Yeah, the old Odell Beckham Jr. story. So there was a fake Bleacher Report account on Twitter that said, they had the graphic and everything. Bills signed Odell Beckham Jr. And it was convincing enough that Beckham Jr. joked that when he woke up, he was wondering how much he had signed for. And he gave a shout out to Von Miller. And yeah, needless to say, a lot of Bills fans were kind of talking about that over the last few days. I wouldn't say a 50-50 split in terms of how they feel about him. I was a little surprised at how many people are adamant that they don't need another receiver because, like Mike said, injuries happen. It's important to field your best roster. We've talked about a lot of uncertainty with the outside depth at receiver. So if something were to happen and he's healthy, I don't know why you wouldn't go after a guy like that in season out. They stay healthy. That's a whole nother matter. But yeah, that was definitely something that had some fans talking this weekend, Matt.
I think it's a matter of the players kind of knowing the situation when they come in, because I'm guessing Beckham wouldn't come in. In theory, if he were to come in, he probably wouldn't be – really, he's not going to be the number 2 guy because I think that's Gabe Davis. And does it become the third guy, the slot guy, the fourth guy? Who knows? But it would be fun, and it would be great conversation if he actually did draw interest, and maybe they brought him in early in the season. So we'll see how that happens.
The biggest problem with Odell for any team that's looking to sign him is I don't know if he'll be any like version of himself this upcoming season coming off of that injury again. So like, when will he be ready to help you? How long will it take him to get back? Like, in a lot of ways, like, he's kind of trending in the same direction as Klay Thompson for the Golden State Warriors, where he came back and he actually like had a couple of good games, but he didn't look anything like the Klay Thomas of old. And I just think that even, Beckham got back to a point in the Super Bowl where he was playing like, old Odell, like the guy that everybody remembered. And then to have that injury happen again, you hate it for the player. But I think I'm more opposed to the idea just because of, when is he going to be ready? How much are you paying him for maybe half a season? And what if the Bills kind of get things go? It's not a horrible idea to get a guy on the roster that can be a just in case situation, but I don't know if he's going to be able to play at a high level if there is a situation that pops up for the just in case.
And it's kind of a matter of picking up the offense too, because correct me if I'm wrong, I think there was one of the players that said it seems like it's been a bit of a challenge. Maybe that was Keenum or somebody that said they were still learning.
Sanders said it last year.
Yeah, Emmanuel Sanders. Yeah,
so they're still learning
complex offense.
So you can't expect a player like a Beckham to come in, let's say week 10 or 11, for example, and just pick it up and be ready to go. There'll be probably like a few routes he'll know easily, a few plays, but then it's still going to take a while. It may be not until the end of the season before he's starting to hit his stride. And that's assuming that he's fully recovered from that knee injury in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and that's fair. And the Rams signed him last year after he became available. He had 5 touchdowns in about half the season, the regular season, but the playoffs is when he turned it up another notch. He was a big reason they were able to come back and beat the 49ers in the NFC Championship game. He went over 100 yards receiving in that one. And then the Super Bowl, it was early, but he looked like an MVP candidate with 2 catches, 52 yards, and a score. And he was just a terror in the slot for them. They didn't have any answers, that being Cincinnati. And then he went down with the non-contact injury. And the Rams, they sputtered for a while after that. It took them some time to kind of get that offense going later in the game and eventually pull away with a 23-20 win.
And the Rams were fortunate because they just had, right when they signed Odell, they had Robert Woods go down with his own knee injury. So it was kind of just fortunate. So again, the luck plays into obviously a team getting to the postseason and winning the championship. So that kind of gets back to my healthy, mentality of just making sure the team's as healthy as possible.
Did you guys have any players in your house go down recently? Maybe some paint chipped off the wall, or, broke a tool, or, I don't know, like your chair broke or something, one of your outdoor chairs. Head over to Value Home Centers right now. They have a $10 off $40 purchase coupon in their weekly ad. You can get over at valuehomecenters.com. Also, text value to 80692 to join their text program. You'll receive an additional $10 off a $40 purchase coupon, plus be the first to know about new promotions, deals, and new products. Mike, this was awesome, man. Thank you so much for coming on, for doing this show with us. I'm gonna hand you the floor here to send us out. Any final thoughts, Bills or otherwise?
So first of all, I just want to thank you guys for the opportunity. You didn't have to put up the contest last year, but I'm appreciative of that, for not just myself, but for the others that were able to win things. I think there was a shout shirt, and I think an evening with wings and some adult beverage or something with you guys. So that was very awesome of you guys to do. I'm actually going to shout out each of your family, because obviously you guys have to put in the work to cover the team, whether it's, on the beat or, at home, but you're putting in some serious hours to craft your work and to stay on top of things. And so we definitely appreciate all the spouses and the kids, and, they may not always understand, but it's awesome that, at the end of the day, they can come up and say thanks and love you and all that stuff. And you get a chance to tuck the kids in the night. That's always awesome. But definitely looking forward to a great 2022 season for the Bills. I was hoping to go before the schedule came out, I would have loved to have gone to that Bears game, but it's New Year's or Christmas Eve, so it's like that's a no-go for me. Unfortunately, I won't be making that drive up. But for those that are going either up to Western New York or going around the country, enjoy it, have fun. Try not to stress. We're going to ride some ups and downs, whether it's 14-3, whether it's 10-7. Hopefully, nothing lower than 10-7. But hopefully, when we get to mid-February, that team's making plans to go to Arizona and then back out to maybe have a little parade or something in frigid and chilly Buffalo, New York. But
that might set a record for the most shirtless men, maybe women as well, if there's a Super Bowl parade in February in Buffalo,
and lots
in
of
negative temperatures,
lots of liquid courage, and maybe some of the people will have some of that that beverage. I think you guys are teasing for Friday night, right? So maybe they'll pick some of that up and hold on to it. I still got a couple of cans of the Pils Mafia that I picked up when I was up at Western New York and picked it up at Tops. I think it was last.
Beautiful.
So, but anyway, yeah, it's awesome. I appreciate it. It was an honor. Thanks to chat. Thanks to you guys. Go Bills, and let's have fun and try to enjoy hopefully a fantastic ride for 2022.
A couple things before we get out of here. Happy 13th anniversary, Mr. Ryan Talbot and his wife, Joelle. That is a lot of work that she's done over the years.
It is.
Put up with
She's had a tolerate for quite a while.
That's awesome. Very cool. Very cool. And then, so just a quick update before we get out of here. Mike mentioned it. We're going to be at Resurgence Brewery on Friday night. We'll have a couple of guests. They'll be coming on. I think some Bills Mafia. You're going to love it. At least one of them. I don't know. I don't know how to set those up. You know what I mean? They're not all confirmed yet. I know 2 definites, 2 almost definites. So we could have 4. And how it's going to work is we're going to have the 2 mics there, Ryan and I. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to do the opening segment like we usually do. We'll do a little training camp preview. And then one of us will come off so we can kind of enjoy the atmosphere and, spend some time with some fans. And then the guest will come on with one of us and we'll kind of just tag team. We'll go back and forth. And I think it'll be fun that way. So come out Friday night, 8:00, Resurgence. You can get yourself a NFL Jam t-shirt. I got a few sent to me from by Homage. Is it Homage or is it Homage?
I always call it Homage with a hard H.
Okay.
The shirts are fantastic quality. I've gotten a few different Bills related ones. Last fall they had a Talkin' Proud. So if the older Bills fans remember that Chuck Knox era, the tie into the city of Buffalo, they had the Talkin' Proud theme for the city as a resurgence. So they printed out a shirt there, and I grabbed one and I wore it to the Bills game last year. But they've had quite a bit of good stuff. There's a sweatshirt and all kinds of stuff, but very comfortable. Go check out these guys at Resurgence and have a good time Friday night with responsibility.
Scott Moranto said he's looking forward to it. That usually means a couple adult beverages. So you might want to come out and see Scotty Boy. He had the party popping at Sunny Reds when we did the show there with Joe Marino in December. All right, send us out of here, Ryan Talbot. Final thought.
Stay locked in here, Bills fans. We will have you covered 3 more times in the next few days, and then obviously every day after training camp.
All right. For Mike Taylor, Ryan Talbot, I'm Matt Parrino. We'll be right back Wednesday night. See you then. It's going